the radical freedom of pivoting when life forces you to change. Good morning, everyone. I'm truly honored to stand before you today to share insights that have profoundly transformed my understanding of success, resilience, and the courage to redefine our paths when life takes unexpected turns. Recently, I had the extraordinary privilege of interviewing Shawna Hayes, a visionary whose work has revolutionized how Black professionals view achievement and fulfillment. Shauna isn't just a thought leader, she's a movement creator whose philosophy has liberated countless individuals trapped in cycles of relentless hustle and burnout. Through her groundbreaking approach to holistic success, she has created ripples of transformation that have touched communities across the nation, empowering Black professionals to embrace the fullness of their lives beyond the limiting metrics of traditional achievement. What makes Shauna's work so revolutionary is her courage to challenge everything we've been taught about success. In a world obsessed with constant growth, upward mobility, and never ending productivity, she dares to ask what happens when life forces us to pivot. And more importantly, what unexpected gifts might we discover in that pivot? Here's the surprising insight Shauna shared that stopped me in my tracks. True empowerment and freedom for Black professionals isn't found primarily in business achievements or accolades. It emerges when we embrace the fullness of our lives, especially during those moments when circumstances force us to pivot, to reconsider, to reimagine our paths forward. This perspective is radical, revolutionary even. For many, particularly in Black communities, the narrative has centered on relentless hustle and unyielding ambition as the only paths to freedom and security. We've been told that to succeed, we must push harder, work longer, sacrifice more. But Shauna's insight turns this conventional wisdom on its head. Real strength, she argues, often emerges precisely when we accept change, whether that's disability, illness, job loss, or other unexpected life shifts, and still choose joy and purpose within our new reality. This challenges everything we think we know about success. We've been conditioned to believe that success only looks like constant upward mobility, like uninterrupted progress, like never showing vulnerability or limitation. But what if that's fundamentally wrong? What if that narrative is actually keeping us trapped? Think about it. We're bombarded daily with messages telling us more is better, more achievements, more recognition, more responsibility, more money, more followers, more influence. But does more always equal better? Does it always equal happiness? Does it always equal a life well lived? The stories I'm about to share with you suggest otherwise. They reveal a counterintuitive truth that has the power to transform how we live. Sometimes the most profound freedom comes not from accumulating more, but from embracing change, from pivoting with purpose, from redefining what truly matters. Let me introduce you to Shauna Jones, a mother balancing entrepreneurship with family life. Before her disability diagnosis, Shauna was known for her relentless drive. She embodied the hustle culture we so often celebrate. She was the woman who could do it all: run a business, raise three children, maintain a picture perfect social media presence, all while making it look effortless. Then came the diagnosis that changed everything. Suddenly facing physical limitations that made her previous pace impossible, Shauna had a choice: cling desperately to her old definition of success or reimagine what success could look like in this new reality. She chose reimagination. She chose courage. She chose vulnerability. Rather than hiding her struggles, Shauna prioritized self care routines and openly shared her journey on platforms like TikTok. She spoke candidly about her disability, about the challenges of motherhood, about the messiness of entrepreneurship. She showed up authentically, limitations and all. The result was astonishing. Rather than diminishing her impact, this vulnerability amplified it. She built an engaged online community inspired by her authenticity and resilience. She grew a supportive following and began mentoring other Black women facing similar challenges. Perhaps most importantly, she helped destigmatize conversations around disability among Black entrepreneurs while modeling holistic well being. What's remarkable about Shawna's story isn't just that she persevered through difficulty, it's that she discovered a new definition of success, one that included joy beyond business, that embraced vulnerability as strength, that prioritized wholeness over hustle. And in doing so, she found a freedom that her previous definition of success could never have provided. This brings me to the first key insight from my conversation with Shawna Hayes. Resilience is multifaceted. Your journey may be interrupted by unforeseen events, but every detour can reveal new strengths and opportunities. Resilience isn't just about bouncing back to where you were before. Sometimes it's about bouncing forward into something new, something unexpected, something that might actually be better aligned with who you truly are. Consider the story of Arlen Hamilton. When Arlen began pursuing venture capital investing as a queer Black woman, she faced obstacles that would have stopped most people in their tracks. She experienced homelessness. She was rejected by countless investors. She faced systematic exclusion from traditional funding networks due to race and gender bias. She dealt with personal financial instability that made her dreams seem impossible. But Arlen didn't just persevere, she transformed her challenges into her mission. She leveraged storytelling via social media and blogs to highlight the experiences of founders like herself. She built alliances within underrepresented founder communities. She focused investments on founders overlooked by mainstream venture capital firms. The result? Arlen raised over $20 million dollars in funding dedicated exclusively to underrepresented entrepreneurs, women, people of color, LGBTQ plus individuals. She launched hundreds of startups led by marginalized founders through backstage capital programs and funds. And perhaps most significantly, she shifted industry conversations about who gets funded and why representation matters in tech and startup spaces. Arlen's story illuminates the second key insight from my conversation with Shawna Hayes. Redefining success is powerful. You don't have to fit into a traditional mold of achievement. Creating your own definition of fulfillment leads to deeper satisfaction. Arlen didn't just want a seat at the table, she built a new table entirely, one where people who looked like her could find opportunity and support. This brings us to Stephanie Thomas, a fashion designer born with disabilities who created Kurt 8 Able Style Consultancy, serving disabled professionals seeking adaptive yet stylish clothing solutions. Stephanie confronted an industry that had systematically ignored the needs of disabled bodies, particularly those belonging to people of color and women identifying individuals. Rather than accepting these limitations, Stephanie launched virtual consultations and workshops, empowering clients globally via digital content and social media partnerships. Kurt Able became recognized as an innovator at major fashion conferences and events. Stephanie's lived experience informed every aspect from design principles rooted in accessibility and needs to active advocacy across industries. She became a featured speaker at SSWW and Fashion Week panels, advocating intersectional inclusion. And she helped shift perceptions around disability, professionalism, and style within both corporate and fashion sectors. Stephanie's journey highlights the third key insight from my conversation with Shawna Hayes: community matters. Leaning into support systems, whether family, friends, or professional networks, is essential for navigating both triumphs and trials. Stephanie didn't just create a business, she created a community, a movement, a space where people with similar experiences could find belonging and support. These three stories, Shauna's, Arlen's, and Stephanie's, reveal a profound truth. The most meaningful success often comes when we're forced to pivot, when we're challenged to redefine what matters, when we embrace change rather than resist it. This perspective is particularly relevant for Black women who have spent years in survival mode, leading teams, raising families, holding down households, carrying communities. The constant pressure to be strong, to keep pushing, to never show weakness can be exhausting. It can disconnect us from our authentic selves, from our joy, from our purpose. As Shauna Hayes so powerfully articulated, there comes a time when shifting from constantly grinding to finally grounding in joy, peace, softness, and self prioritization becomes not just desirable, but essential. This isn't about giving up or giving in. It's about a spiritual, emotional, and mental recalibration. It's about recognizing that softness is not weakness, it's a radical act of self love. It's about learning to say no without guilt, about guarding your energy, about dropping the superwoman cape. It's about reclaiming your identity, not the version shaped by family expectations, societal pressures, or professional demands, but the real you that's been waiting to emerge. So I challenge you today: what if the disruption you're facing isn't an obstacle to your success, but a doorway to a more authentic version of it? What if your pivot isn't a detour, but the actual path? What if embracing change with all its messiness and uncertainty is precisely what will lead you to the freedom you've been seeking all along? I invite you to examine the stories you tell yourself about success, to question the metrics you use to measure your worth, to consider that perhaps, just perhaps, your most profound impact and deepest fulfillment might come not from relentless pursuit of more, but from the courage to redefine what matters when life forces you to change. The world doesn't need more exhausted achievers. It needs whole humans who have found the courage to pivot with purpose, to embrace change with grace, to define success on their own terms. It needs you, not the version of you that's constantly striving, but the version that's fully alive. How will you redefine what thriving looks like for yourself in this season? Will you have the courage to pivot when necessary? Will you embrace the radical freedom that comes from creating your own definition of success? The world is waiting for your answer. Thank you.